The series begins with a girl named Kim Bok-ju, who has been doing weightlifting since she was in elementary school. Now, Bok-ju is an athlete at Hanyul University, dreaming of becoming a national champion. She is the star athlete of her school and her family, especially since her dad used to be a weightlifter too. In another part of the school, there's a popular and good-looking swimmer named Jun Hyung. He's very talented and breaks a record, making him famous right away. The scene then focuses on Bok-ju and Jun Hyung's campus life. Bok-ju is getting special training because she's her school's top athlete. At the same time, Jun Hyung is struggling with a past trauma that makes him lose focus, and because of that, he gets disqualified from the national athlete selection. One day, Jun Hyung and Bok-ju meet by accident. And Jun Hyung, while riding his bike, crashes into Bok-ju, who's walking with her best friend, Nunhee. At that time, Nunhee is impressed by how handsome Jun Hyung is, but Bok-ju doesn't care much. Instead, she feels a bit weird when she notices a lace handkerchief that Jun Hyung accidentally dropped during the crash. So, Bok-ju and her friends, who are weightlifters, are always encouraged to eat a lot. But for gymnast athletes, they have to be very careful about what they eat. Because of this, people often compare how weightlifters and gymnasts look. Even though Bok-ju doesn't have the same slim body as the gymnast, she feels confident that someone will see her inner beauty. There have always been arguments between the weightlifting and gymnastics teams. One day, Bok-ju accidentally pushes a gymnast, causing her to get hurt. This leads to the whole weightlifting team being punished. After saying sorry to the gymnast, Bok-ju and her best friend let out their frustration at their secret spot. On their way back, they hide in the laundry room to avoid getting caught by the dorm guard. While hiding, Bok-ju spots a strange man stealing the female athlete's underwear. Soon after, Bok-ju chases after the man in a black jacket and ends up catching Jun Hyung, who was leaving his room to go to a club with his friend. Bok-ju thinks Jun Hyung is the thief and reports him, convinced because he had a lace handkerchief, which is usually something women own. Jun Hyung asks Bok-ju to give him back his handkerchief, but Bok-ju refuses. She wants him to return the shirt she believes he stole, but Jun Hyung can't do that because he's not the underwear thief. The next day, Bok-ju accidentally saw Jun Hyung picking up coins from a wishing pool where students usually make wishes. This strange act made Bok-ju even more disgusted with him. Jun Hyung kept asking for his handkerchief back, but Bok-ju refused because she wanted her shirt returned first. Later, Bok-ju got a new roommate who used to be a talented gymnast but failed to become a national athlete. This made Bok-ju a bit nervous since gymnasts and weightlifters were very different in many ways. That same day, Bok-ju decided to return Jun Hyung's handkerchief because the real thief had been caught. However, Jun Hyung got upset because Bok-ju washed the handkerchief. It was special to him as it still had his mother's scent, and he had kept it for a long time. In his anger, Jun Hyung accidentally pushed Bok-ju into the pool, not realizing she couldn't swim. Feeling guilty, he quickly saved her. At that moment, Jun Hyung remembered his childhood friend who saved him when he fell from the second-floor classroom. It was a cheerful, chubby little girl named Kim Bok-ju who loved to eat. Jun Hyung's anger turned to happiness when he realized he had met his childhood savior again. But Bok-ju, who was initially impressed by Jun Hyung's good looks, now felt embarrassed. He used to be a nerd, but now he was so handsome. She felt insecure and annoyed when Jun Hyung called her fatty, just like when they were kids. Since then, Bok-ju tried her best to avoid Jun Hyung. However, Jun Hyung always greeted her and tried to be close to her. Since they went to the same university, it wasn't easy for Bok-ju to avoid him, especially because Jun Hyung liked teasing her. One day, Bok-ju couldn't take it anymore and told Jun Hyung to stop calling her fatty. She even threatened to hit him if he didn't stop. But Jun Hyung, who wasn't the nerdy kid anymore, wasn't scared of her threats. Even when Bok-ju actually hit him on the head. During the holidays, Bok-ju helps out with her dad's fried chicken business. She even delivers the orders to customers. One day, she runs into Jun Hyung again when he orders from her shop. Jun Hyung is impressed by how talented and hardworking Bok-ju is. To let her rest a bit, Jun Hyung pretends he doesn't have any change but Bok-ju, tired and uninterested in being around him, leaves quickly. Jun Hyung ends up going to her shop to pay, even though Bok-ju had already paid for his order herself. So, the weightlifting team is like a big family. Their coaches, Hyun-woo and Choi, even cut the food budget to make sure they get better transportation. Then, Hyun-woo uses his own money to provide good food for the team. Meanwhile, we learn that Song Shir-ho, Jun Hyung's ex, is still in love with him. They used to train together as national athlete candidates, but their relationship has gotten worse over time. Jun Hyung also has an older brother, Jae, who is a weight specialist. Although Jae isn't Jun Hyung's real brother, he cares deeply for him, especially about the trauma Jun Hyung has been dealing with. And Jae, who is friends with a medical expert at Haniel University, urges Jun Hyung to start therapy to help him heal. One rainy day, Jun Hyung gives Jae an umbrella as he heads home. On his way to the clinic, Jae bumps into Bok-ju, who is struggling to carry something heavy in the pouring rain. Turns out, Jae's kind and polite nature makes Bok-ju fall for him instantly. Feeling touched by his kindness, Bok-ju treasures the umbrella Jae gave her as a good luck charm. Later, Bok-ju hears that her friend is in the hospital because of food poisoning from kimbap. At that time, Coach Choi feels terrible because she bought cheap kimbap to save money, but it ended up making her athletes sick. The next day, Bok-ju received a new dressing table as a gift to replace the one she had returned. On her way back to the dorm, she accidentally bumped into Dr. Jae. Excited, Bok-ju secretly followed him and discovered that he was a doctor. This made her feel a bit insecure, but her crush on him was stronger than her doubts. Eventually, Bok-ju gathered the courage to visit Dr. Jae's clinic for a consultation. Bok-ju decided to keep her weightlifting a secret and wanted to appear more feminine in Dr. Jae's eyes. Because of her growing feelings, Bok-ju even started saving money to join a weight loss program at his clinic. She thought about asking her dad for extra money, but when she saw him still using his old bike, she changed her mind. Dr. Jae was constantly on Bok-ju's mind, but she struggled to find a way to get more money, and it was driving her crazy. Then a great opportunity came. Haniel University was hosting a climbing competition between departments, and the prize for the winner was $300. The next day, the big day finally arrived, and Bok-ju was super excited. As soon as she got to the mountain, she couldn't wait to start. She was so focused that she didn't even pay attention to her trainer's advice. With all her strength, Bok-ju pushed forward, ignoring Jun Hyung, who had been calling out to her. Sadly, Bok-ju didn't win the competition, and she took out her frustration on Jun Hyung, who had been hanging around her the whole time. That night, Bok-ju and her friends kept celebrating, even though none of them had won. But Nun-hee, who got too drunk, caused some trouble. By chance, Jun Hyung and his friends were there too. When Jun Hyung saw some men insulting Bok-ju, he got angry and taught them a lesson. After that, he told Bok-ju and her friends to run away with him because the men were chasing them. Jun Hyung's help made Bok-ju forget about her frustration from not winning the prize she wanted. The next day, Bok-ju's uncle proudly showed off his new bicycle, which he bought with his savings. He even said he'd be willing to sell it to buy a gift for his sibling. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Shir-ho bought Jun Hyung a pair of shoes, but this made him uncomfortable, so he returned them. Shir-ho wasn't in a good mood because of her gymnastics training results and later went to Jun Hyung's place, making a scene. She got mad at him for not accepting her gift as a thank you, even though they were just ex-lovers now. On the other hand, Dr. Jae was thinking about his meeting with Bok-ju. He sent her a message saying she reminded him of his idol soccer player. This made Bok-ju even more excited to find a way to get money, so she could visit Dr. Jae. She was eager to meet him again, and when they ran into each other by accident, it felt like a dream come true for Bok-ju. That day, she spent all her savings to sign up for a weight loss consultation. From then on, Bok-ju started living a double life. She hid the fact that she was a weightlifter and pretended to be a classical music student who could play the cello. In front of the man she liked, Bok-ju wanted to seem feminine and graceful. On the other hand, Shir-ho has been feeling upset and emotional because her family isn't as wealthy as before, and they can no longer fully support her dream of becoming a national gymnast. This has been stressing her out and affecting her health, especially her eating habits, which are getting worse. One day, Dr. Go noticed Shir-ho feeling nauseous and became concerned about her health. Meanwhile, when Bok-ju met Jun Hyung by the wish pool, she asked him what kind of gift would be good to give to someone she secretly liked. Jun Hyung told her that guys usually feel uncomfortable with handmade gifts from girls they just met, especially if they don't really like the girl. Hearing this, Bok-ju decided not to make a handmade gift for Dr. Jae. The next day, Bok-ju wore a red ribbon during her consultation with Dr. Jae to try and get his attention. She also returned the umbrella he gave her, slipping a small note into the umbrella bag. But Dr. Jae mentioned that the umbrella actually belonged to his younger brother. Bok-ju's chance to meet Dr. Jae was cut short when she learned her dad was coming to campus to deliver chicken to her. Panicking, Bok-ju ran as fast as she could to her training place and even asked Jun Hyung, who she ran into, to give her a ride there. She was really scared that her dad would find out she hadn't been practicing that day. Meanwhile, Shir-ho happened to see Bok-ju and Jun Hyung together during this time. Later, when Jun Hyung started his therapy for his trauma, he shared that it was caused by memories of his mother that he couldn't forget. He still missed his real mom, who left him a long time ago, and asked Dr. Jae's family to take care of him. After one of their sessions, Dr. Jae walked Jun Hyung back to the dorm and handed him the umbrella that Bok-ju had returned. Inside the umbrella bag, Jun Hyung found a thank you letter that Bok-ju wrote for Dr. Jae, but he didn't know who wrote it. On the other hand, Shir-ho began asking about Bok-ju's relationship with Jun Hyung. Bok-ju explained that they were just old friends from elementary school. Shir-ho then revealed that Jun Hyung was her ex-boyfriend, though most students, including Bok-ju, already knew this. The next day, Bok-ju started eating smaller portions, but Jun Hyung kept teasing her about it. Suddenly, Shir-ho showed up and felt uncomfortable seeing how close Bok-ju and Jun Hyung were. There, Shir-ho mentioned that Bok-ju was her roommate, which made things a bit awkward for Jun Hyung. The tension grew when Shir-ho invited everyone to eat together. It turned out that Shir-ho approached Jun Hyung because she wanted to get back together with him. However, Jun Hyung no longer had feelings for her, especially since it was Shir-ho who ended their relationship to focus on becoming a national athlete. The next day, during her consultation, Bok-ju became even more fascinated by Dr. Jae. However, Dr. Jae noticed that Bok-ju hadn't lost any weight this week, even though he had given her a list of things to follow. When Bok-ju returned to the dorm, Shir-ho suddenly told her to get closer to Jun Hyung, since Shir-ho felt like Bok-ju was already pretty close to her ex-boyfriend. The following day, Bok-ju's coach met with her father to ask for permission to move Bok-ju up to a higher weightlifting class, which meant she would need to gain weight. Meanwhile, Dr. Jae congratulated Bok-ju for losing 300 grams, even though it was a small amount. But when Bok-ju changed her clothes to continue the checkup, she ran into Jun Hyung, who was visiting his older brother at the clinic. Jun Hyung was surprised because his older brother thought Bok-ju was a cellist. Even though Jun Hyung didn't know why Bok-ju lied, he decided to keep her secret. He guessed that Bok-ju was going to the clinic because she liked his brother. Jun Hyung agreed to keep the secret, but made Bok-ju promise to do what he asked. The next day, Bok-ju followed all of Jun Hyung's requests without arguing. During another consultation session with Dr. Jae, Bok-ju complained about how Jun Hyung kept bothering her. There, Dr. Jae told Bok-ju to be patient, explaining that Jun Hyung was actually a good guy. Bok-ju then praised Dr. Jae, saying he was more mature and even more handsome than Jun Hyung. This made Dr. Jae happy, since most people usually compliment Jun Hyung's looks instead of his. The next day, Jun Hyung was feeling upset because his seniors made him sign up as a weightlifter to represent their club. Weightlifting wasn't seen as a cool sport, so most students avoided it. After that, Jun Hyung met Shir-ho, who had been waiting for him. She wanted to invite him to eat his favorite pizza together. But Jun Hyung, who no longer had feelings for her, turned her down. Still, Shir-ho didn't give up and hoped she could get closer to him again. Meanwhile, the weightlifting team was excited about the upcoming university sports competition. Everyone was looking forward to it, except for Jun Hyung, who decided to hide in the game room instead of joining in. Soon after, Shirho came by to keep him company. The competition between the weightlifting and gymnastics clubs was the most awaited match. As the weightlifting event was about to begin, Bok-ju decided to take Jun Hyung's place to save him from getting punished by his seniors for not showing up. After calling Jun Hyung, he rushed over because he didn't want Bok-ju to compete for him. He was worried she would get in trouble if the weightlifting team found out she was helping another club. Even though Bok-ju won the match, her friends were upset and disappointed. They thought she had a crush on Jun Hyung, and that's why she was willing to go so far to protect him. Shortly after, Jun Hyung invited Bok-ju to talk in private. He was upset that she took his place in a competition and had to face the disappointment of her weightlifting teammates. But Bok-ju, who had a big crush on Dr. J.E., didn't really care. All she wanted was for Jun Hyung to stop bothering her, so she could focus on getting closer to Dr. J.E. The next day, Shirho grew curious about why Bok-ju had stepped in for Jun Hyung during the weightlifting match. At that time, Shirho started to wonder if Bok-ju might have feelings for Jun Hyung. Meanwhile, Jun Hyung sent a message to Bok-ju, apologizing and thanking her. He also gave her tickets to a classical music concert for her and Dr. J.E. But Bok-ju became nervous, unsure about how to prepare for her first date. That evening, Bok-ju gathered the courage to go to the classical music concert, hoping to get closer to Dr. J.E. It was a night she would never forget, and she even skipped her night practice for it. After the date, Bok-ju felt really grateful to Jun Hyung for giving her the chance to feel like a queen for one night. On the other hand, Shirho wasn't doing well. The stress of failing to become a national athlete was affecting her health, and she was starting to rely on anxiety medicine to cope. On the other hand, after Jun Hyung used Bok-ju as a shield to protect himself from a splash of water from a passing car, he started feeling differently about her. But since Bok-ju seemed to really like his older brother, Dr. J.E., Jun Hyung was content watching Bok-ju happily pursue her feelings for him. The next day, Bok-ju's father came to give his permission for her to join the heavyweight program. This was a big surprise and also sad news for Bok-ju because she realized that if she had to gain weight, she wouldn't be able to continue seeing Dr. J.E. Previously, Bok-ju's coach had requested this because it was the best option for their weightlifting team. By moving up to the heavyweight class, Bok-ju would make room for other athletes to join her previous class. Her two best friends were super excited and supported her to gain weight, not knowing that Bok-ju secretly didn't want to. The next day, Jun Hyung asked his coach for permission to enter a small competition. Even though the competition wouldn't affect his achievements, he wanted to use it to help him deal with his trauma. Later, Bok-ju met Jun Hyung with a sad look on her face because she had to move up a class. There, Jun Hyung advised her to focus on her weightlifting career instead of trying to impress Dr. J.E. by sacrificing her training. Of course, Bok-ju, who was in love with Dr. J.E., felt annoyed hearing Jun Hyung's advice. From that day on, Coach Choi personally kept an eye on Bok-ju, making sure she was gaining weight. During her next consultation with Dr. J.E., Bok-ju felt really guilty because her weight had gone up again. Not only was her coach pushing her to gain weight, but her dad also sent her special food to help her succeed in moving up to the heavyweight class. While eating together, Nunhee accidentally saw a message from Dr. J.E. reminding Bok-ju of their consultation. Nunhee finally discovered Bok-ju's secret and felt bad for her because her first love wasn't going as planned. In another place, Shirho was taking care of Jun Hyung, making him herbal medicine because he had a bad cold, even though his match was coming up soon. The next day, Nunhee started helping Bok-ju by secretly eating some of her food so that Bok-ju wouldn't gain too much weight. Nunhee also helped Bok-ju dress cuter when she was going to see Dr. J.E., but Bok-ju still felt guilty as her weight kept increasing. However, Dr. J.E. didn't seem to mind at all. He even shared about Jun Hyung's trauma and looked worried about his upcoming match. After her consultation, Bok-ju made a wish at the campus pool, hoping Jun Hyung would win his match. Shirho also showed up at the match to support Jun Hyung, but he still seemed nervous because of his trauma. He started the race late and finished in 4th place. However, when Jun Hyung returned to campus, all his disappointment disappeared when he saw Bok-ju waiting for him. At that time, Bok-ju made a special fortune note for Jun Hyung and invited him to dinner as a reward for his hard work. But their time together made Shirho jealous. Feeling upset, Shirho threw away the herbal medicine she had prepared for Jun Hyong. Bok Ju then invited Jun Hyong to her dad's shop to enjoy a special meal. Bok Ju's uncle was happy to see her getting close to a handsome guy, but her dad felt a bit jealous of this new friendship. After dinner, Bok Ju took Jun Hyong to a spot with a beautiful night view. She encouraged him to overcome his trauma. Meanwhile, Shirho, still upset with Bok Ju, searched through her bag and found Bok Ju's diet book. The next day, while Jun Hyong was jogging, he noticed Shirho entering the weightlifting team's room. Later that afternoon, Bok Ju was shocked and angry to find out that her diet book had somehow ended up with her father. She stayed quiet, unable to explain the secret she had been keeping from both her dad and her coach. The news about Bok Ju spread quickly, and Nunny tried to explain to the team that Bok Ju had her reasons. After getting extra training as punishment, Bok Ju stayed silent and apologized, though she couldn't reveal the real reason for her actions. Shirho felt guilty seeing Bok Ju, but she didn't know what to do and stayed silent. Dr. J.E. also heard that Bok Ju canceled her consultation that day. Meanwhile, Jun Hyong, who had been trying to reach Bok Ju all day with no success, decided to visit her house. There, he met Bok Ju's uncle and learned what had happened, making him even more worried about her. Soon after, Jun Hyong sent a message to Bok Ju, letting her know that it was Dr. J.E.'s birthday, which made her feel even sadder about her situation. To make things worse, her father was also very disappointed and began avoiding her. He was so upset that he even thought about visiting Bok Ju's diet doctor, but before he could, his illness suddenly returned, and he fainted outside their house. That night, Bok Ju decided to quit the weight loss program at Dr. J.E.'s clinic. As a farewell and birthday gift, she brought a potted plant to Dr. J.E.'s office and quickly left afterward. Dr. J.E. was happy with the sweet gift and tried to find Bok Ju. Meanwhile, Jun Hyong was relieved when Bok Ju finally answered his call, but before they could talk for long, she hung up because Coach Choi was nearby. When Bok Ju was about to be punished again by Coach Choi, he finally told the coach the truth about what was going on. After hearing the whole story, Coach Choi apologized to Bok Ju. She understood that Bok Ju was going through a tough time and that her decision to focus on her dream was really difficult. There, Coach Choi reassured Bok Ju that she would always be there to support her. Seeing Bok Ju crying on Coach Choi's lap made Jun Hyong feel her sadness too. Later, Jun Hyong playfully teased Bok Ju with a piece of sausage and tried to cheer her up because he didn't want her to stay sad. He then invited her to a meat shop for a meal. On the other hand, Sun-ok was upset because Nun-hee and Bok Ju had kept Bok Ju's diet program a secret from her, leaving her feeling disappointed with her two best friends. The next day, Bok Ju's father asked her to come home for a while. Feeling shy, he gave her a lipstick as a gift and apologized for focusing too much on weightlifting. He admitted that he hadn't been sensitive to the fact that Bok Ju, like other teenagers, had normal desires and interests too. Meanwhile, Shirho's hard work during extra training paid off, and she showed her best performance during the competition. But after returning to campus, she received a message from Jun Hyong, asking her to meet. Shirho was excited, thinking Jun Hyong wanted to meet on her happy day. However, Jun Hyong was actually there to ask why Shirho had done something hurtful to Bok Ju the day before. He suspected that Shirho had given Bok Ju's diet book to the coach on purpose. Shirho was upset and refused to apologize. She even confronted Bok Ju, thinking Bok Ju had told Jun Hyong about the book. When Bok Ju found out that Shirho had taken her diet book, she became even more upset, and the two of them ended up arguing. Angry and frustrated, Bok Ju decided to stay in her friend's room for the night. When she got to Nun-hee's room, Bok Ju told her about the fight with Shirho. But Sun-ok, still upset, acted like she didn't care. Later, Jun Hyong called Bok Ju to apologize for what Shirho had done. He didn't expect Shirho to treat Bok Ju that way. After their conversation, Jun Hyong invited Bok Ju to hide with him when the dormitory guard came to check the roof. During that time, Jun Hyong hugged Bok Ju, feeling more comfortable being close to her. The next day, Jun Hyong returned to his therapy sessions to heal from his childhood trauma. He remembered the pain of when his mother left him to start a new life abroad without him. However, Jun Hyong felt thankful for his uncle and aunt, who had been very kind and raised him with love. Meanwhile, after talking through their feelings, Bok Ju and son Ok made up, and they celebrated by eating ramen together. Later, Bok Ju finally gathered the courage to call Dr. J.E., who had been texting her. She made up an excuse, telling him that she was abroad and couldn't continue the diet program. Dr. J.E. encouraged her, but this only made Bok Ju feel sadder. To cheer herself up, Bok Ju called Jun Hyong, and he immediately came to see her. Bok Ju expressed her worries about not finding true love because of her weightlifting career. Jun Hyong comforted her by inviting her to go to the movies. That night, Bok Ju waited for Jun Hyong at the cinema, but Jun Hyong was delayed because he received a call from the hospital. Shurho had fainted and was taken to the hospital, so Jun Hyong went to pick her up. After dropping Shurho off at home, Jun Hyong rushed to meet Bok Ju, but she was upset that he arrived so late. To apologize, Jun Hyong treated Bok Ju to an all-you-can-eat meal. Back at the dorm, Jun Hyong's closeness with Bok Ju made Shurho feel jealous and upset once again. The next day, Jun Hyong was shocked when he found out his older brother was heading to meet a college friend at Jun Hyong's own campus. Panicked, Jun Hyong quickly contacted his friends to stop Bok Ju from meeting his brother. Meanwhile, Bok Ju was peacefully sleeping in the infirmary until Taekwon came in and told her that Jun Hyong's older brother was on his way. But it was too late cause Dr. J had already arrived. Jun Hyong rushed in and quickly asked his older brother to leave before he could see Bok Ju, who was hiding in one of the infirmary cubicles. After the chaos settled, Dr. J, on his way home, bumped into Bok Ju on campus. There, he greeted her with a bit of confusion, wondering why she was there. Jun Hyong tried to come up with an excuse for Bok Ju, but she decided to be honest. Bok Ju admitted that she had been lying all along, apologized to Dr. J, and walked away, leaving him puzzled. Later, Jun Hyong explained everything to his brother, and Dr. J felt guilty for how things turned out with Bok Ju. He hadn't realized that Bok Ju liked him, which was why she had joined his diet class. Heartbroken, Bok Ju cried alone, feeling foolish about the whole situation. She tried to release her frustration by exercising non-stop, pushing herself hard to get rid of her disappointment. However, her friends began to worry about her condition, seeing how worn out and upset she was. The next day, Jun Hyong left his blind date because Bok Ju called him. She just wanted to ask how Dr. J felt after what happened the day before. Jun Hyong, knowing Bok Ju wasn't okay, tried his best to comfort her. He told her not to worry about his older brother, reassuring her that Dr. J didn't even realize she was on a diet because she liked him. After spending time together, Bok Ju invited Jun Hyong to drink soju with her so she could forget her heartbreak. When she got drunk, Jun Hyong had to carry her, even though it wasn't easy. Bok Ju eventually fell asleep, and Jun Hyong, confused by his feelings, decided to take her home using a trolley. When they got home, Bok Ju started babbling about Jun Hyong, which made her father wonder about their relationship. The next day, Bok Ju's father told her not to drink too much like she did the night before. Her uncle also gave her advice and said he supported their relationship, thinking it would be great for their future. But Bok Ju insisted that she and Jun Hyong were just friends. Meanwhile, Dr. J met with Dr. Go and asked about Bok Ju on campus. He was curious about who Bok Ju liked so much that she joined the diet program. Dr. Go guessed that maybe Bok Ju liked Jun Hyong, since he was the most popular guy on campus. As they were about to part, Bok Ju ran into Dr. Go and Dr. J. At that time, Dr. Go invited Bok Ju to join them for lunch, and Jun Hyong also came along to make her feel more comfortable. During lunch, Dr. Go complimented how well Jun Hyong and Bok Ju got along, but Bok Ju felt sad seeing how close Dr. J and Dr. Go were, as they seemed to care a lot for each other. To cheer her up, Jun Hyong invited Bok Ju for a ride in Dr. J's car. Soon after, they went to the beach, where they played in the waves and relaxed on the sand. While they were resting, Jun Hyong confessed that he was the one who secretly left chocolate on Bok Ju's bench when they were in elementary school. Afterward, Bok Ju became busy preparing for the upcoming heavyweight competition. Before the match, she made a wish at the campus pool. Jun Hyong came by to encourage her, assuring her that she would do great in the match. Unexpectedly, Dr. J.E. also came to watch Bok Ju's competition. This made Bok Ju nervous, and she almost lost focus. As she lifted the weights, she felt self-conscious, worried about how she looked in front of Dr. J.E. Although she won the match, Bok Ju could only hold back her sadness. Tears fell from her eyes, showing the inner struggle between her feelings and her mind. Later, Jun Hyong talked to his older brother and explained that Bok Ju liked him. That's why Bok Ju felt so disappointed, fearing she looked unattractive in Dr. J.E.'s eyes during the match. While the weightlifting team celebrated Bok Ju's victory at her father's shop, Bok Ju stayed in her room, crying as she thought about Dr. J.E. And Jun Hyong, realizing where she was, went to find her, understanding what she was going through. The next day, Bok Ju still couldn't find her usual cheerfulness. She felt something was off with her feelings, and she almost got hit by a car because she wasn't paying attention. Shortly after, Jun Hyong took her out, bought her lots of snacks, and tried to make her smile by acting silly and doing funny things. But despite his efforts, Bok Ju remained sad. When she returned to the dorm, Dr. J.E. called her and asked to meet. He apologized, saying he didn't want to hurt her feelings and wished he had been more thoughtful. He told Bok Ju that her presence had always given him more energy and enthusiasm. There, Bok Ju quickly reassured Dr. J.E. not to feel guilty about her one-sided feelings and then said goodbye. After that, Bok Ju went straight to campus, looking for Jun Hyong with an angry expression. She was upset because Jun Hyong had told Dr. J.E. that she liked him. This made Bok Ju feel even guiltier towards Dr. J.E., and she told Jun Hyong to stay out of her business from now on. At that moment, Jun Hyong felt disappointed because all he wanted was to make Bok Ju happy again. Feeling frustrated, Jun Hyong went to see his older brother, his heart full of anger. He was upset because his brother's apology made him feel better, but it ended up hurting others, including Jun Hyong himself. The next day, Jun Hyong and Bok Ju's friends noticed that the two of them seemed to avoid each other and didn't feel like meeting up. Feeling guilty for being upset the night before, Jun Hyong decided to reach out to his older brother because he didn't want to stay angry at him for long. On the other hand, Dr. J.E., while playing ball with Jun Hyong, pretended to be upset and apologized for not being the perfect older brother Jun Hyong might have wanted. He then asked Jun Hyong what Bok Ju meant to him, noticing how much Jun Hyong seemed to care about her. Meanwhile, Shurho was getting closer to a senior who had liked her for a while, though she had always ignored his attention. The next day, Bok Ju felt even sadder because Coach Choi was fired after admitting to using team money for personal reasons. However, he had used the money to help the family of one of the athletes. All the athletes, including Bok Ju, were heartbroken because Coach Choi had always been like family to them. Later, Bok Ju's uncle gave Coach Choi a ride home. That afternoon, Bok Ju suddenly disappeared, even though she had an important meeting with a sponsor. Worried, Jun Hyong went out to look for her. After searching into the night, Jun Hyong finally found Bok Ju. He scolded her for making him so worried, but Bok Ju explained that she was deeply sad and heartbroken, feeling like she didn't want to do anything anymore. Hearing this, Jun Hyong immediately hugged her, trying to comfort her and ease her sadness a little. When Bok Ju got home, she broke down in tears, telling her dad and uncle that she didn't like weightlifting anymore. She said it felt strange for girls to be involved in weightlifting, and she didn't want to continue. Her father and uncle felt sorry for her and understood how she was feeling. Meanwhile, Jun Hyong was confused about the feelings he had for Bok Ju. At that time, Taekwon guessed that Jun Hyong might be in love. After thinking about it, Jun Hyong realized he really did have feelings for the girl who gave him the origami word of encouragement. The next day, Bok Ju's father and coach talked about what was best for her. The coach suggested giving Bok Ju a break so she could think about weightlifting again. Her friends supported whatever decision she made and hoped she would soon find her love for weightlifting again. Later, Bok Ju called Jun Hyong and told him she was taking a break during the winter, thanking him for all his help. Soon after, Jun Hyong rushed over to Bok Ju's house and asked her what she planned to do during her break. He also joked that she should contact him every day as proof. Bok Ju found his request amusing and laughed. There, Bok Ju made a list of things she wanted to do during her vacation. She was excited about all the things she wrote down. She started by going to the library to study, but ended up falling asleep there. Then, she applied for a part-time job, using the skills she had. Meanwhile, Jun Hyung was waiting for a message from Bok Ju. Later, Dr. Jae visited Jun Hyung and could tell that Jun Hyung had feelings for Bok Ju. Jun Hyung shyly admitted his feelings to his older brother and asked him not to worry or make Bok Ju cry. That night, Jun Hyung went to Bok Ju's house, where her uncle told him that Bok Ju had started a part-time job. When Jun Hyung saw Bok Ju being friendly with a guy at her workplace, he felt jealous and refused to be friendly with her new coworker. Bok Ju then asked Jun Hyung to hang out, but Jun Hyung jokingly told her that she wasn't allowed to have male friends other than him. And Bok Ju, who didn't know about Jun Hyung's feelings, found his request funny. On their way home, Bok Ju talked about her feelings for Dr. Jae. She said she felt calmer now because her feelings had changed and she no longer saw Dr. Jae the same way. She now thought of him as more of an older brother. Hearing this, Jun Hyung felt relieved. In the dormitory, there's a rumor about a ghost with pale legs that appears at night, making everyone talk about it. On the other hand, Bok Ju's father has accepted her decision to take a break and tries to be supportive while she rests at home. However, one of Bok Ju's seniors gets upset because he thinks a guy called Bok Ju his girlfriend the day before, which Bok Ju quickly denies. Soon after, Jun Hyung shows up again at Bok Ju's workplace to pick her up, and he sticks close to her, making Bok Ju worry that people might think they're dating. Then, Jun Hyung finally gets the courage to kiss Bok Ju, showing his feelings for her. At that time, Bok Ju, surprised and confused, didn't expect Jun Hyung to have more than just friendly feelings toward her. In another place, Taekwon accidentally runs into Sunok and has to hide when he hears Nunhee's voice. Meanwhile, Nunhee screams because she thinks she saw the ghost everyone's been talking about. The following day, Bok Ju starts feeling confused about why Jun Hyung likes her. She thinks that maybe Jun Hyung just feels sorry for her because she was rejected by Dr. Jae. When Jun Hyung tells her that she has been his first love since elementary school, Bok Ju has a hard time believing it. To Bok Ju, Jun Hyung has always been just a best friend. Jun Hyung doesn't mind, though, and says they can start their relationship from friendship. Later, when Jun Hyung takes Bok Ju home, he accidentally grabs her wallet after it falls, as Bok Ju rushes back to the dorm after getting a call from Nunhee. When Jun Hyung arrived at the dorm, he decided to look through Bok Ju's wallet. He felt annoyed when he found a photo of Dr. Jae in there. Then, he found a note from Bok Ju listing her wishes and felt like he discovered a treasure, something he could use to make Bok Ju fall in love with him. Meanwhile, Nunhee was telling Bok Ju about the ghost she saw at the dorm, but Bok Ju's mind wandered to the kiss with Jun Hyung, making her cheeks turn red. Later that night, when Bok Ju woke up for a drink, she saw a figure she thought was a ghost, but it was actually Shur-ho sleep-eating. Embarrassed, Shur-ho ignored Bok Ju. The next day, Shur-ho admitted to Bok Ju that she has strange sleep habits and asked her to stay out of her business. Shur-ho thought the sleeping pill she had been taking might be causing a problem. As Bok Ju was leaving, she ran into Taekwon and Jun Hyung. Taekwon was excited to see Bok Ju back. Bok Ju pulled Jun Hyung aside to talk about Shur-ho, worrying that she wasn't doing well, but she didn't mention what happened the night before. Jun Hyung secretly returned Bok Ju's wallet to her bag. Later that day, Jun Hyung waited for Bok Ju in front of her house, wanting to greet her as a boyfriend and invite her to the amusement park. Since he had read her wish note, he wanted to make her wishes come true. However, when Bok Ju contacted their friends, they all wanted to join. At that time, Jun Hyung had hoped for a fun date at the amusement park with Justin and Bok Ju, but now they had company. During the amusement park trip, Jun Hyung suggested that the group split up so he could have some time alone with Bok Ju. Even though he was scared, Jun Hyung bravely went on a ride that he usually avoided. Afterward, he bought a drink with 2 straws because he knew it was something Bok Ju dreamed of doing with her future boyfriend. During the fireworks, Jun Hyung held Bok Ju's hand to keep her warm, trying to make her heart race when they were together. Despite his efforts, Bok Ju was still shy around him. The next day, Jun Hyung bought a bouquet of roses for Bok Ju and called her while she was on her way home from Sunok's house. He waited for her at the bus terminal, but when she arrived, she was in tears. Bok Ju had just found out that her father was in the hospital. Without hesitation, Jun Hyung took her to see her dad. Elsewhere, Dr. Jae was having a meal with friends when his ex-lover and her husband showed up. Dr. Jae's cheerful mood changed as soon as he saw them. And the ex-lover's husband, feeling jealous, acted up while drunk, which led Dr. Jae to stand up and teach him a lesson for his rude behavior. Back at the hospital, Jun Hyung left some supplies for Bok Ju in case she needed to stay overnight. When Bok Ju returned home, she found a sweet note Jun Hyung had written, saying her family shop would be closed for a while. While preparing clothes for her father, Bok Ju discovered a file her dad had kept, showing how much he wanted her to succeed in weightlifting. Seeing her father's strong support, Bok Ju decided to return to the sport. The next day, Bok Ju finally went back to the weightlifting room on campus. Her coach was thrilled to see her return, filled with her usual energy and determination. In another place, Bok Ju's father was relieved to hear that his daughter had decided to return to campus and continue her training. After practice, Bok Ju asked Jun Hyung to meet up, and this time she dressed up cutely just for him. She thanked Jun Hyung for all his help, and they enjoyed the beautiful snow that night to celebrate her return to campus. Bok Ju even admitted that she might be starting to like Jun Hyung because he was always the first person she thought of, whether something good or bad happened. Shortly after, Bok Ju returned to the dorm happily, enjoying sending sweet messages to Jun Hyung like a couple. The next day, Jun Hyung seemed even more attached to Bok Ju. After practice, they went on another date. However, Jun Hyung felt annoyed when he saw Bok Ju wearing the hair clip she used to wear when meeting his older brother. Then, he suggested that she buy a new one and asked her to keep wearing it. When Bok Ju got back to the dorm, she was shocked to find Shir-ho unconscious. As her roommate, Bok Ju was worried about her condition. Meanwhile, Taekwon told Jun Hyung about Shir-ho's situation. Jun Hyung rushed to the hospital to check on Shir-ho. Later, Bok Ju asked about Shir-ho's condition and was thankful that she was getting better, but she also felt guilty for not being more concerned about her roommate earlier. And Jun Hyung, too, felt a bit regretful when he learned that Shir-ho had tried calling him several times before she passed out. The next day, Jun Hyung visited Shir-ho in the hospital. Although he no longer had romantic feelings for her, he still felt bad about her situation. While there, Jun Hyung received a call from Bok Ju, who wanted to visit him. Bok Ju brought flowers for Shir-ho, but Jun Hyung took them since Shir-ho was allergic to pollen. At that moment, Bok Ju felt a bit uncomfortable seeing how attentive Jun Hyung was to Shir-ho. She became even more upset when Jun Hyung kept his distance after receiving a call from Shir-ho. Feeling jealous and hurt, Bok Ju turned to food to deal with her emotions. When Jun Hyung asked why she seemed angry, Bok Ju refused to explain and left in frustration. Meanwhile, the weightlifters were confused because their coach left after a replacement was hired. Then, the athletes decided to take action to get their two coaches back. The next day, they went on a hunger strike and kept training to show how serious they were about getting their coaches reinstated. In another place, Jun Hyung visited his older brother and gave him advice about paying attention to Dr. Go's feelings, suggesting that friendships between men and women could turn into love. Later, Jun Hyung checked on Bok Ju during her hunger strike and became very worried about her. He brought her painkillers and a thick coat, so she wouldn't get too cold. Seeing Jun Hyung's sweet gesture made Bok Ju's friends feel a bit jealous of their relationship. The next day, Sunok returned to campus after her mom allowed her to resume training. The athletes, hearing about possible corruption, became even more determined to protest, so their concerns wouldn't be ignored by the campus leadership. Moments later, Coach Hyun-woo arrived after receiving a call from the leader, and finally, the leader agreed to the weightlifters' demands. They celebrated Coach Choi's return at Bok Ju's father's shop. During the celebration, Bok Ju's uncle, feeling jealous of Coach Choi's closeness with Coach Hyun-woo, announced that he and Coach Choi had started dating. Meanwhile, Jun Hyung was missing Bok Ju, who hadn't been replying to his messages. And Bok Ju, still upset, purposely ignored his calls. When Bok Ju returned to the dorm, She called Jun Hyung and asked to meet him before the dorm's nightly roll call. But there, Bok Ju, still looking upset, gave Jun Hyung his jacket back. Then, Jun Hyung asked her to tell him why she had been mad at him for days. Finally, Bok Ju confessed that she was upset because of Jun Hyung's sweet attitude toward Shurho. Jun Hyung explained that he was only trying to make up for the guilt he felt about not answering Shurho's call when she needed him. Jun Hyung then hugged Bok Ju, asking her not to stay upset and reminding her to always be open about her feelings instead of keeping them inside. The next day, Bok Ju and Jun Hyung were showing more care for each other, their growing romance catching the attention of Bok Ju's father, who visited her campus that morning. However, Bok Ju's dad couldn't clearly see the couple's faces. Nun-hee and Sun-ok also noticed the couple in hoodies, feeling awkward but not realizing it was actually Bok Ju and Jun Hyung. During Jun Hyung's therapy session, the doctor was pleased to see the positive changes in him now that he had a girlfriend. Meanwhile, their friends and the weightlifting team were excited about the new couple on campus. Nun-hee even suggested that she and her friends should stay single together. Bok Ju, however, had to keep her relationship with Jun Hyung a secret. During breaks and lunch, she had to push Jun Hyung away so that Nun-hee wouldn't see him holding her hand. Jun Hyung felt frustrated because he didn't want to hide their relationship. He thought they were old enough, and nothing should stop them from showing their feelings. But Bok Ju still didn't have the courage to tell her friends. On the other hand, Dr. Jae tried to fix his friendship with Dr. Go by inviting her to dinner and suggesting they spend a weekend together. However, Dr. Go realized that Dr. Jae only saw her as a friend. While Dr. Go was learning to love herself, she understood that love cannot be forced, and it would take time for her to heal. The next day, Bok Ju freaks out when she finds a pimple on her nose, likely caused by the face mask nun he gave her the night before. Feeling embarrassed, Bok Ju pretends to have a cold when she sees Jun Hyung. When Jun Hyung asks her to meet up, Bok Ju refuses, saying she needs to rest. Wanting to help, he goes to his mom's pharmacy to get medicine for Bok Ju and then sneaks into her room to deliver it. That's when he realizes Bok Ju was only pretending to have a cold because she was embarrassed about the pimple. Suddenly, Nun-hee and Sun-ok arrive with lots of food for Bok Ju, forcing Jun Hyung to hide under her bed to avoid being caught. Later, when Shurho comes back to the dorm, she notices Jun Hyung hiding. At that time, Shurho makes up an excuse to get Bok Ju's friends to leave, saying she needs rest. Afterward, Bok Ju, Jun Hyung, and Shurho hang out at Bok Ju's favorite spot. In that moment, Shurho doesn't feel awkward because she supports Bok Ju and Jun Hyung's relationship. The next day, Taekwon drags Jun Hyung to a blind date. Coincidentally, one of Bok Ju's weightlifting friends, Hanul, spots Jun Hyung and Taekwon at a cafe. Hanul then tells Bok Ju that she saw Jun Hyung on a blind date, thinking he was Bok Ju's boyfriend. Upset, Bok Ju rushes to the cafe, taking Nun-hee and Sun-ok with her. When Bok Ju sees Jun Hyung, she can't stop staring at him. She sends Jun Hyung a message that makes him nervous. But then, Bok Ju gets angry when the girl on the date touches Jun Hyung's arm, so she finally reveals that she is Jun Hyung's girlfriend. Nun-hee and Sun-ok sit them down, and as an apology, they suggest having a meat party that night. Jun Hyung is shocked when he ends up having to pay the bill for everyone. When Nun-hee and Sun-ok arrived at the dorm, they eagerly asked Bok Ju how her relationship with Jun Hyung was going. Both were excited to hear Bok Ju's story. Meanwhile, Taekwon felt a bit worried about his best friend, Jun Hyung, because he was dating a weightlifter who eats a lot and is really strong. The next day, Bok Ju started worrying about what people might think of their relationship. She was afraid that others would pity Jun Hyung for dating someone like her, a weightlifter. But then, Jun Hyung reassured her, telling Bok Ju that he truly liked her and felt lucky to have her as his girlfriend. In another place, Jun Hyung's uncle and aunt were surprised when his mother showed up unexpectedly. She returned to Korea to ask for help because her daughter was sick. The next day, Jun Hyung's mother went to campus to meet him. By chance, she ran into Bok Ju and asked for directions to the swimming building. And Bok Ju, who was also heading there to see Jun Hyung, politely showed her the way. When Jun Hyung saw his mother, he was shocked, feeling like he was dreaming of seeing her again. His mother was overjoyed to see how well her son had grown, and Bok-ju felt touched watching them reunite. Soon after, Jun Hyung and his mother spent time together, catching up and reconnecting. His mother even gave him a pair of shoes as a gift. Later, they had dinner at Dr. Jae-yi's house, and although Jun Hyung's real mother had returned, he still felt more comfortable calling his aunt mom. After taking his mother back to the hotel, Jun Hyung promised to meet her again the next day. He then met up with Bok-ju, who was happy to hear how much joy Jun Hyung felt after seeing his mom again. The next day, Jun Hyung wore the shoes his mother gave him, even though they were a bit too small. On his way to see her, he stopped by Dr. Jae-yi's house and accidentally overheard a conversation between Dr. Jae-yi's family. Jun Hyung was deeply upset when he learned that his biological mother had returned to Korea to borrow money from Dr. Jae-yi's family to pay for his sister's treatment. Feeling hurt and embarrassed, Jun Hyung lashed out, saying mean things about his mother. This made Dr. Jae-yi's mom very sad, and she ended up slapping Jun Hyung. Meanwhile, Bok-ju received wonderful news. She had qualified as a national weightlifter. All her friends were thrilled and proud of her. Excited, Bok-ju tried to call Jun Hyung, but he wasn't answering, which made her worried. Dr. Jae-yi's family was also concerned because they couldn't reach Jun Hyung either. The next day, Bok-ju grew even more worried when she found out Jun Hyung hadn't returned to the dorm. Soon after, she went to meet with Dr. Jae-yi and finally learned what had happened to Jun Hyung. During an interview for the weightlifting club, with Bok-ju as the star, she couldn't stop worrying about Jun Hyung. In the middle of the interview, she decided to go look for him. Bok-ju searched for Jun Hyung at the beach, but couldn't find him. Worried, she looked everywhere until, late that night, she finally found Jun Hyung at the campus swimming pool. Seeing him in the pool, Bok-ju feared he was unconscious. Even though she couldn't swim, she tried to check on him. Bok-ju hugged Jun Hyung as he cried, feeling disappointed and hurt by his mother. Once Jun Hyung felt a bit better, Bok-ju explained to him that his mother was in a difficult situation, which is why she acted that way. There, Bok-ju encouraged him to meet with his mother and Dr. Jae-yi, who were both very worried about him. Bok-ju even took Jun Hyung to Dr. Jae-yi's family pharmacy, where his mother was relieved to see him come back safely. The next day, Jun Hyung said goodbye to his mother, who was heading back to Canada. He forgave her and wished his half-sister a successful recovery. Bok-ju felt proud of how mature Jun Hyung had become. Meanwhile, Dr. Jae-yi visited Dr. Go's new clinic, feeling a bit awkward but clearly not wanting to be far from her. Bok-ju, however, started feeling jealous whenever other girls paid attention to Jun Hyung. She also became anxious because she would soon have to continue her training at the National Athlete Center. And Jun Hyung, proud of Bok-ju, promised to train hard so he could also join the National Athlete Program and be with her. From then on, Jun Hyung trained diligently, and Bok-ju encouraged him every step of the way. Together, they made a wish that Jun Hyung would be able to join her in the National Athlete training soon. The next day, Jun Hyung had his big match. Despite the trauma that caused him to fail in a previous competition, he was still one of the favorites. At that time, Jun Hyung finished in second place, just 3 seconds behind a fellow national athlete. Bok-ju was incredibly proud of his achievement, as it meant Jun Hyung had a chance to become a national athlete. That night, Nunny took Bok-ju to the practice room, and Jun Hyung, who had been with Bok-ju earlier, joined them. When they arrived, the room was dark, and Jun Hyung kissed Bok-ju. Suddenly, the lights turned on, and all of Bok-ju's friends were there to surprise her. The following day, Bok-ju said goodbye to her father as she left for national athlete training. A few days later, Jun Hyung visited Bok-ju's father's shop to check on his health, worried about him. Shortly after, Jun Hyung found out that Bok-ju's father was in the hospital, waiting for a heart transplant. However, Bok-ju's father asked Jun Hyung not to tell Bok-ju, so she could focus on her training without worrying. Meanwhile, Bok-ju's fellow athletes teased her about the risk of Jun Hyung cheating on her during their long-distance relationship. They told Bok-ju to be careful with her handsome boyfriend. Worried, Bok-ju called Nunhee to ask about Jun Hyung, who had said he was going to practice. Nun-hee and Sun Ok immediately questioned Taekwon, who was with him at the time. But there, Nun-hee began to suspect that Jun Hyung might secretly have a new girlfriend. The next day, Taekwon started to keep an eye on Jun Hyung, noticing how he rushed out after practice. Nun-hee and the others secretly followed him. They eventually discovered that Jun Hyung had been busy because he was taking care of Bok-ju's father in the hospital. Realizing they had been wrong to suspect him, they apologized to Jun Hyung. There, he asked them not to tell Bok-ju so she wouldn't worry about her father. Jun Hyung then called Bok-ju, explaining he had just been very busy lately, so she wouldn't get suspicious. The following day, Bok-ju got injured and was allowed to go home to rest. Her uncle and father were surprised to hear she was coming home. They asked Jun Hyung to stall her, so they could get home before she arrived. Jun Hyung took Bok-ju to a cafe to buy some time, but his odd behavior made Bok-ju annoyed. Frustrated, Bok-ju demanded to check Jun Hyung's phone to see who had called him. Angry, she left for home, but luckily her father and uncle had already arrived by then. Nun-hee and Sun Ok also came over to distract her. Meanwhile, Jun Hyung went to Bok-ju's shop since she kept ignoring his calls. When Jun Hyung arrived at the shop, he met Bok-ju's father instead. They had a nice conversation, and Bok-ju's father started to accept Jun Hyung, appreciating all the help he had given him at the hospital. The next day, after Bok-ju left to return to practice, her father and uncle went back to the hospital. However, Bok-ju unexpectedly returned home and ran into her neighbor, who told her about her father's condition. Worried, Bok-ju rushed to the hospital to see her father and promised to win a gold medal as a gift for him, hoping it would bring him luck for a successful surgery. Later, Bok-ju met with Jun Hyung to apologize for suspecting him the other day. She realized that Jun Hyung had been helping care for her father all along. The following day, her father's surgery was successful. Meanwhile, Bok-ju competed internationally and won the gold medal she promised. Everyone was thrilled with her victory, and when she arrived at the airport in Korea, she hugged Jun Hyung, who was there to greet her. A year later, Jun Hyung also became a national athlete and trained at the same place as Bok-ju. Eventually, Bok-ju and her friends graduated from Haniel Sports University. At the graduation ceremony, Bok-ju and Jun Hyung's families met for the first time. This beautiful story, filled with dreams and hard work, ended with the graduation of Bok-ju and her friends. Afterward, Jun Hyung sweetly proposed to Bok-ju, promising to marry her once she won her next gold medal. The series ends. The moral lesson from this series is if you're worried about love, just remember even weightlifters can lift hearts, but they still can't dodge pimples.